What Gregory shared is a lot of what I sort of had working within me that I might bring today. And one of the themes I'm hearing is choice and a recognition that we have a choice. Now, we're always choosing, but we may not know we're always choosing. Another way to say that is we're either choosing consciously or unconsciously. So that's one of the themes I'm hearing emerging today, and I'm so incredibly grateful to Amy and to Gregory and whoever else was involved in creating the themes for this year. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to see them. There's a theme each month, and they're incredible because they're so simple. You know, sometimes I'll see spiritual communities and the theme will be like 3 sentences. And I love that it's a word. And the word for January, as you probably know, is authenticity. One of my favorite words and one of my favorite topics to explore. What does it mean to be authentic? And what is authenticity? So I want to start actually with a quote. When in doubt, for me, it's when in doubt, go to Wikipedia. And the reason I love going to Wikipedia is it's collective consciousness. I don't really know how Wikipedia works, but apparently we all put everything in there, like our perspectives and opinions and viewpoints, and it comes up with what the collective believes or feels about something. Is that true? Sounds okay. It works for this moment, so it is. See, we even get to choose that, right? That's what I've decided Wikipedia is. It's a great opportunity for us to look at what collective consciousness is saying. So it's a little bit of a long quote, so I'm going to very consciously say it really slowly so that we can have an opportunity to really be with these words. Authenticity is the degree to which one is true to one's own personality, spirit, or character, despite external pressures. There's another sentence, but I'm going to repeat that one. Authenticity is the degree to which one is true to one's own personality, spirit, or character, despite external pressures. Very profound for this time, this month, and a lot of what's happening in the world. And it goes on to say, the conscious self is seen as coming to terms with being in a material world and with encountering external forces, pressures, and influences which are very different from and other than the self. So to me, the reason this stood out as the perfect beginning to our conversation today is that profound statement about external pressures. Because many of us in New Thought, I'm going to own that I was part of this for many, many years, I wanted to change the externals. I spent a lot of time learning to change the externals, or believing that I changed the externals. But I had this profound shift, this profound moment, and I've shared this before, but it came through losing everything. That was the opportunity. It didn't mean I was going to surrender. It was just the opportunity to surrender. So I had a conscious or unconscious choice to make. Was I going to resist or surrender? So when we talk about authenticity, we can talk about it from different levels, and I love that that talked about personality and spirit. We can be authentic to our personality, or we can be authentic to spirit. And the reason I'm connecting that with external pressures is, what happens, there's this wonderful Daniel Nahmod song. If you don't know who Daniel Nahmod is, he's incredible. He wrote this song, Love Is My Decision. But there's another song of his that simply says, what if the race is over and we all already won? What if? Karen knows we played that at our retreat, that beautiful song. So what if this surrender, this authenticity, is a recognition of the truth of who and what we are, and we do get to choose depending on our level of consciousness, and what I mean by level is where we're putting our attention, what we're choosing to see, We can talk about that through the lens of personality or spirit, which is why I loved that quote. We can be authentic to our personality. We could also call that ego. My personality self has all kinds of opinions about all sorts of everything. This is right, this is wrong, how could this be happening? But when I'm authentic to spirit, that's something really different. And that's the place that we can arrive at where we recognize the race is over. And we've all already won. Now maybe that word won is not one I would choose, but I understand what he means by that we've already won, because I spent the first 40 years of my life running a race. There's this wonderful quote, I think it's Lily Tomlin, that said, the problem with winning the rat race is you're still a rat. Right? And so I spent my first 40 years chasing something, and I didn't even know what I was chasing. But what I know is I was wanting something to be different, out there, up there, so that I could feel different in here. But I arrived at a place where I recognized that that was backwards. I'm not going to achieve anything in the outer realm with any kind of permanence until I shift that awareness and recognize that what wants and needs to shift is internal. And that's how we arrive back at choice. I want to offer something very real time. I want to talk about this hysteria around the greatest winter storm that's ever going to hit the Bay Area. And look outside. And the reason I bring this up is this. We have a choice what we focus on. And when I'm having a difficulty being authentic with my spirit, and what I mean by spirit is that changeless, eternal truth. See, when we're surrendered and connected with that, when we're living as an authentic expression of that, our seeming differences don't matter. And so, what I needed to do in order to make a firm connection and a knowing that that's who I was, I first had to kind of turn off the external pressures. In other words, I spent more than a decade not watching the news. And that was an important part of my journey. It may or may not be an important part of yours. Because what I recognized is, what the media was telling me is, oh my gosh, everything is so terrible and we're all about to die. And look at what's happening right now with this winter storm. Now, here's the interesting balance. People will say, well, don't you need to be aware? Well, sure, I may want to be aware that it's about to rain. But when I've decided that the whole place is going to flood and we're all going to die, when I choose that, how am I going to show up in the world? When I choose fear, what is my life going to look like? When I choose love, compassion, and understanding, what is my life going to look like and feel like? Now that's profoundly simple. It's almost too simple for our complex and complicated minds to understand sometimes. In other words, sometimes we can be a little bit too smart to get some of these really essential teachings or beings, ways of being. So for me, I had to unplug for a while from those external pressures. It's a new year. We're about to have a new president. People have a lot of ideas about what that means. And this is the greatest opportunity for every single person in this room and in the world. We can choose fear. And we can even absolutely validate why we would choose fear. Here's all the reasons. See, we evidence gather. I don't know if you... We gather evidence and then we'll say, are you afraid? I'm afraid. Look why we should be afraid. And then we build the fear, and then, whoa, this is what happens. And, then we need to build a wall. Right? Because we have to keep them out, whoever the them is. And once we see someone as an other, we're not authentically connecting as spirit. You know, there's this big bang that happened, and maybe that was that big bang that we all from one source. So we're all these different particles of that one source. And what if that's true? If that's true, then our political party doesn't mean we're different, because that's being authentic to the personality self. And maybe that's important. Maybe. That would look something like, I need to speak my truth and tell you how I feel about this and what I think about this. And then we can debate that. My question is, how's that working for us? And that really becomes, again, that profoundly simple principle or question. How is that working? Another way to say this is, what do I want my life to look like and feel like? And what must change within me, in my perspective? What must I choose in order for that to manifest? So it's 2017, it's a new year. We've decided that on January 1st it's a new year, which, by the way, has absolutely no rhythm with the planet. We've just made it up. Right, January 1st, it's a new year, so we all have decided, because it's now January 8th, right? How are we doing on the resolutions? Because we're a week into it. So for me, it's something really different. And my intention for my life is to recognize that every moment is what we call January 1st. An opportunity to reflect what needs to be released, what do I want to focus on, what am I going to choose? Because to me, it's about consciously creating the life that we want. And that involves looking at what those unconscious beliefs, stories, and ideas are that are unconsciously choosing our life. So I'm really called today to open it up for questions and comments. We have 10 minutes, and I'm really happy to be in this community. And one of the reasons I love this community is collectively you're choosing love. And what I love about community in general is sometimes, some days, maybe one of us forgets that. But we gently remind each other of a greater truth. So I could stand up here and talk for 10 more minutes, but I would really love to hear from you. What is authenticity to you? Or you can ask a question. I just want to open it up for dialogue. Right?
Authentic is authoring it.
Authentic is...
You're the author.
I'm the author of my own life.
I am the author.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll sign copies after.
I am the author of my own life. Isn't that wonderful? That's like the quote. Again, it's a new year. We have 365 blank pages. What do we want to write on those pages? Pat.
In numerology, personality is defined as what others see us.
Okay.
And if in truth we are everything and just show certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So the personality is really not a gauge of really who we are.
Right.
And I learned this from, in addition to numerology, I learned it from acting. Because in acting, you have to go within yourself and find that character that you're supposed to play. And I found that I am everything.
Yeah.
And I just show certain things. And that's what personality is defined as in numerology.
Thank you. So did everyone hear that? Personality is that part that we present to the world, right? So we could call that ego as well. Here's another thing I want to add to that. We all see it through our own lens. We all watch the same movie. I'm going to go with your acting metaphor. We all watch the same movie and have a different impression on what we just saw. That's also what happens with what we call reality. So even if you're showing a particular personality, I'm going to see it through my lens. If I've chosen fear, I might see something in Gregory's personality to be afraid of. If I choose love, I'm going to see something in Gregory's personality to love. So now that, of course, sounds really simple, but how do we get there is another question. How do we get to choosing love? And for me, it's a combination of unlearning and focus. What do I need to unlearn? What do I need to look at? What are those core beliefs, stories, and ideas that I have about the world that are unconsciously creating my life, because they are. Have you ever noticed that two people, I think it's in the movie Capote, he says, I don't know what happened with me and my brother. It's as if I woke up one day and walked out the front door and he chose the back door. I think his brother had a life of drug addiction. So, what do we need to unlearn so that we can really know that essential truth of who we are? And what do we want to focus on so that we can consciously create our life? Yeah.
To build on this, there's the concept of ontology, which is, what are the assumptions of your belief?
Yes.
And the thing that I've noticed the most in trying to speak to other people that are unfamiliar with belief work is, what are the assumptions you have about what you believe is a critical question.
Yeah, what are your assumptions? Exactly. So another word for assumptions, the language I use is core false beliefs. I like assumptions a lot because there's this whole framework. We believe we come to a conclusion by gathering evidence. What if we really gather evidence to support our conclusion? So if my base assumption is fear, my gosh, is there lots to find. If my core assumption is love, isn't there so much to see to support that assumption? Right, so what we want to do is we want to really get down and look at what those core assumptions, those core beliefs, those core ideas are. And then what I like to do is ask the question, what if my core assumption was different? What if I choose love? See, if you imagine this, the statement, the world is a kind and loving place, can you find evidence to support that? The world is brutal and hostile. Can you find evidence to support that? So we want to come down and look at what the core assumptions are. And of course, when we shift that, all of a sudden, there's more and more love. And that's really, to me, the core of metaphysics and New Thought, is that we shift what we focus on, and what we focus on grows. Okay, we have time maybe for one or two more. Yes, hi.
For me, it was connecting soul and the body. Because if you can't make that connection, you can never love yourself.
Yes.
So that's an important piece, to connect the two and do the work of self-care, self-love, affirmations, things like that.
Thank you. That's beautiful. And what you're speaking to is integrating, right? Integrating maybe what we call the personality self and the spirit self. And I'll confess something. I like living in the spirit more. It's kind of more fun, and it's more loving, it's more open. And then there's this personality thing that happens. There's stuff that happens in the physical realm. Certain people get elected to office. I feel sick. You know, but what I'm calling that is what creates how I experience it, right? Because maybe it's not about changing the external. And so the integration piece is recognizing that it's not this or that, it's both this and that. I'm an individual, separate self on one level of awareness, which we would call our body or our physical experience. And then we're also infinite beings in all one, different aspects of one source. So it's both. So we have this human experience. The more we authentically connect with spirit and as spirit, the more two things happen. Two things have happened in my life. Because I'm the only one I can speak for. And what a gift that is. Two things in my life. One, the externals start to matter less and less and less. Ken Wilber says, I went out dancing and my body hurts, but I don't hurt because I'm not my body. And then the other thing is, the greatest paradox is, it all starts to shift. So it's like all that stuff I was striving and clinging for, when I make a connection with the truth of who I am, it seems to start to, that's what we call manifestation. We have time for maybe one more. Hi.
Hi. So on top of that, as far as being true to your authentic self, and yet choosing love and knowing that we are all part of that love, I just wanted to share my feelings on that whole political thing, and not just political, but anything that is that comes into that maybe you feel conflict with. I am in the mindset of knowing that everything is love, And being true to my authentic self, I have certain things that I know and feel that I want to support. It's not necessarily coming from a place of fear and saying, oh my God, the world's gonna fall apart. It's more about, I'm not just gonna lie down and say, oh well, that's gonna happen, and it's more about choosing to support what I believe in to be my authentic self.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that I'm saying that what I don't believe in is not part of the bigger plan, or that they're not part of God, part of love. It's just that there's a different perspective, a different consciousness surrounding that. So anyway, I just wanted to share my feelings about that.
Yeah, thank you.
Because it's huge.
Yes, and I love the way you're saying that, right? Because there's this idea, first there's something that we call a spiritual bypass, right? Where we don't acknowledge the difficult feelings, we don't acknowledge the pain, we don't acknowledge sickness, we say none of that's real, I'm only going to feel this. And I've been part of communities where we couldn't say something like I have a sore throat, because someone would say, what did you do to manifest that? What did you do to create that in your consciousness, right? And so this is something that's really, for me where I've come, it's something really different. Okay, I have a sore throat, but I'm not my sore throat. Now, what you're speaking to, I want to say thank you, because we each are called to act in the world in our own way, and that's going to look different for each of us. And what I love what you said is, what do I stand for, not what am I against? And that right there will shift everything, because what we know is what we resist really does persist. That's a basic law of the universe. What we give energy to grows. And the more we all watch the news and say, isn't it terrible that Stormageddon is coming this weekend? We need to all lock ourselves in our house so that we can be safe. And that's a great metaphor for maybe what's happening politically, right? So we are, because this is a profound moment, it's a call to action, but the action, for me, needs to be grounded in spirit. And I love that you talked about Gandhi and the resistance, right? Because when we approach that we are against and we fight something, quite simply, it continues. More and more and more. And we are now living in an age where everything is instantly accessible. So we get to see all of this, and it gets to live in our, and do I get worked up about this? And how could they? How could they? Okay,
I
one
just
more.
wanted to add one more thing about, Martin Luther King. He came from a place of peace. He was not about war. He was not about, oh, I'm going to, hate my enemy or anything like that. He was about taking action in a direction through love, through peace, peaceful movement, etc. And if it wasn't for him and many others, things wouldn't be, maybe somebody else would be taking that place. But what I'm saying is that it takes standing in our authenticity from love and supporting what we believe in and not focusing in on the hate.
Right, thank you. And that's absolutely right. And remember, what I want to close with is, remember that each of us gets to choose that for ourselves, what we want, how we want to be in the world in terms of what kind of external action. Because that's, if you look at that quote, we talk about being authentic to the personality and to spirit. Blending those two is my intention, right? I want to be in the world as spirit, regardless of the action. I want to be looking at what I want to be for, not against. I want to look for where's the love in this situation, because I have come to understand that everything is love or a request for love. Now, I don't necessarily mean if someone's yelling and screaming at me that they're requesting love, but what the request is, in the midst of that, can I still be love? Because it really is, it's easy to love in this room. It feels really good to love in this room. And then we go out in the world, and we might have those external influences. So the key here is, how can I be in the midst of anything happening in the world and still be true and authentic to spirit? So my invitation for each of us is to recognize that we are each called to be love in the world. And that's, and I'll close with the Gandhi quote. Very simple, is this: if you don't meet God in the next person you see, you're probably not going to find God. And that next person on a personality level may look or appear different. It may look like the other. So we recognize that the truth of who and what we are, this spiritual truth, is where we're all one. That's my invitation. So I want to invite us to take a moment and gently close our eyes as we really anchor this in prayer. So what a gift to be here right in this moment and to choose love. To choose a deeper awareness and a deeper understanding of what we call reality. Knowing that in the midst of any situation in the world, we are choosing love. A profound shift just happened right here in this room. And because of that, there's a ripple effect that goes out into the world and is felt by every living being. What a blessing. So we take a moment to know that this is the greatest reality and the greatest truth. And so it is.